Donald Trump thinks he can weaken us with his plan to divide and conquer. Pierre Poilievre's plan will leave us divided and ready to be conquered. Because a person who worships at the altar of Donald Trump will kneel before him, not stand up to him.
Canadian Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc recently articulated Canada's unwavering determination to forge a new trade agreement with the United States, even as the Trump administration escalates tariffs to a punitive level. Welcome viewers to my channel. If you're new here, please subscribe, like my video, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. Speaking on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan, LeBlanc conveyed a sense of steadfast resolve, stating that Canada is prepared to stick around and do the work needed to find a resolution. He expressed a firm belief that despite the current tensions, a great deal of common ground still exists between the two nations, which can serve as a foundation for building a strong, collaborative economic future that benefits both sides. This commitment signals that Canada is prioritizing dialogue and negotiation over an outright trade war, despite the significant economic pressure it is facing. The ongoing discussions are not just about trade, but about preserving a deeply integrated relationship that has been a cornerstone of North American stability for decades. The new tariffs and their rationale. The recent announcement from the White House marked a significant escalation in the ongoing trade dispute, raising duties on Canadian goods not already covered by the Canada-United States-Mexico Agreement, CUSMA, from 25% to a punishing 35%. The U.S. administration publicly justified this decision by claiming that Canada has not been proactive enough in addressing two key issues: illegal immigration and the flow of fentanyl across the northern border. This move was not an isolated incident, but rather part of a broader policy shift by the Trump administration to use tariffs as a tool for leverage on a wide range of issues, moving beyond traditional trade disputes into areas of domestic policy and national security. The president has framed this strategy as a campaign for fairness, invoking a 1977 law to declare the trade deficit a national emergency and bypass congressional oversight, demonstrating a clear intent to reshape global trade dynamics. In a separate interview, U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, who has a history of involvement in trade disputes with China and the negotiation of CUSMA, offered a more direct explanation for the tariff increase, pointing to Canada's earlier retaliatory tariffs as the primary cause. Greer argued that the U.S. needed to increase its own tariffs to maintain the integrity of our action and ensure its effectiveness. He made it clear that President Trump's overarching goal is to fix the terms of trade with Canada, and that if a new agreement cannot be reached, the higher tariffs will remain in place indefinitely, creating a new, more protectionist baseline for the bilateral trade relationship. This suggests a strategic use of tariffs, not just as a bargaining chip, but as a long-term policy tool intended to permanently reshape trade flows and establish a new economic order. These tariffs are particularly impactful because of the immense scale of U.S.-Canada trade. While President Trump announced higher tariffs against more than 60 trading partners, Canada is the largest and most significant economic partner included in this latest round of increases. According to 2024 data from the Census Bureau, Canada is the largest global buyer of American goods, with purchases totaling approximately $350 billion. It also ranks as the third largest seller of goods to the U.S. market, with sales reaching $412 billion. This demonstrates the immense economic significance of the bilateral relationship and highlights why these tariffs have such far-reaching consequences for both countries' economies, impacting deeply integrated supply chains in sectors like automotive, steel, and aluminum. The tariffs threaten to disrupt these established relationships, leading to higher costs for consumers, potential job losses on both sides of the border, and an overall reduction in economic efficiency. Diplomatic efforts amidst deep-seated strains. LeBlanc described his recent meetings with U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick as constructive, cordial conversations. He felt that his team departed with a better understanding of the American concerns in the trading relationship. This insight, he said, is crucial for finding a path forward. However, he was also realistic about the lack of a final agreement, admitting that while he was encouraged by the conversations, the two sides are not yet where we need to go to get the deal that's in the best interest of the two economies. This candid assessment indicates that while communication channels are open, the fundamental gaps between the two countries' positions have not yet been bridged, and a significant amount of work remains. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has also publicly voiced his disappointment, releasing a statement that directly challenged the U.S. administration's justification for the tariffs. Carney specifically pushed back on the claims about fentanyl, noting that Canada accounts for only 1% of U.S. fentanyl imports and has been working intensively to further reduce these volumes. This statement served as a direct and fact-based rebuttal to one of the key justifications for the new tariffs, suggesting that the U.S. administration's public reasoning might not align with the on-the-ground reality and could be a pretext for broader economic protectionism. This public disagreement highlights the deep mistrust that has developed between the two governments. LeBlanc anticipates a conversation between Prime Minister Carney and President Trump in the coming days. He noted that Carney has cultivated a very business-like, respectful relationship with the U.S. president, which could prove instrumental in de-escalating the situation and finding a way to move forward. LeBlanc emphasized that Canada fully understands and respects the U.S. president's focus on national security and, in fact, shares this priority. He framed Canada's negotiation stance not as an opposition, but as a collaborative effort. How can we structure the right agreement where we can both continue to supply one another in a reliable, cost-effective way that preserves jobs essential to the American economy? He stressed that this goal of job preservation and economic stability is equally critical for Canada, highlighting the shared interest that could ultimately lead to a resolution. The U.S.-Canada relationship has been under considerable strain since the beginning of the Trump presidency. This tension has been compounded by the president's repeated and provocative suggestions that Canada could one day become the 51st state, a notion that Prime Minister Carney has consistently and emphatically rejected. During a meeting in the Oval Office, Carney famously responded by stating that Canada is not for sale, a powerful declaration that highlights the fundamental differences in national identity and sovereignty that continue to complicate trade negotiations and diplomatic relations. This underlying tension, combined with the new tariffs and the public rhetoric, sets a challenging backdrop for future discussions, making the path to a new agreement difficult but not impossible. The outcome of these negotiations will not only define the future of U.S.-Canada trade, but will also serve as a test case for how traditional allies navigate a new era of protectionist policies.